So I said, wait, the Epstein Ballroom? That's what you're calling it? And he was kind of sheepish at that moment, but then he said, well, it has come up more than a few times.
Michael.
Joanna.
So much to discuss, not least Prince Andrew, which I know we are going to come on and discuss. So much for our political improvisation today.
But I have a good one. I can't even hold my tongue here, so I don't mean to talk over you, because now I talk over you rather than you talk over me. But
Go on.
So I had this this conversation just the other day, the day before yesterday. So with somebody, a White House circle person, a person in the middle of all of this. And we were just talking, this is a person I've gotten to know over quite a long period of time. So we're quite friendly, and it was just catching up. And suddenly this person just sort of going over what's happening in his world, just to say Trump world. And he referred to something called the Epstein Ballroom.
The Epstein...
Without prompting from me. So I said, wait, the Epstein Ballroom? That's what you're calling it? And he was kind of sheepish at that moment, but then he said, well, it has come up more than a few times. So within the White House, there is, I think that there are two points about this, that the ballroom itself is regarded as bordering on preposterous, and this awareness that Epstein is everywhere in Trump world, and that in fact everything is a distraction from Epstein. So, and maybe a third thing, which I think it's important to point out, which I think that people don't quite understand, is that there are a lot of people around Trump who have a level of self-awareness, irony, that they are not Stephen Miller. They are not walking into this blind. Now, of course, they are not walking out of this, which is, I think, a key point. But nevertheless, they are there, and have found this across writing 4 books about Trump, that there is a kind of captive world around him that is kind of clear-eyed.
And are they clear-eyed on what happens next with the pile of rubble that used to be the East Wing?
Well, it will be I think it will be officially the Trump Ballroom, but unofficially, mordantly, the Epstein Ballroom.
Well, the claw of Jeffrey Epstein has come back again this week in my former country, with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he is now being called, being entirely stripped of the word prince. So he is a bit like the artist formerly known as Prince, the prince formerly known as Prince.
It's the ultimate defenestration.
The ultimate.
The defenestration of our time, yes.
And he's been taken out of Frogmore Cottage, which of course isn't really a cottage at all in the English way. It's actually 30 bedroom.
Out of Frogmore.
Frog marched out of Frogmore and dispatched to the furthest corner of Norfolk, which is a damp, cold, wind-blown corner of the United Kingdom, where he's going to reside in some old farmhouse. So farewell, Andrew.
So the question I think we have to ask, and it's not as if we have not asked this question before, because it is the obvious question, that Epstein has pulled down everyone who has at one time or another embraced him or embraced others too, but embraced specifically him in this context. But it has not pulled down. The one person it has not pulled down is Donald Trump, the person who has had the longest, closest, most intertwined relationship with him. He yet is, I mean, I would not exactly say he is impervious to it because it is all around him, but he is yet above it.
Well, it's interesting also just to think about why Andrew and why now. And this fall, he's been the subject of 2 books. We interviewed the author of one of them the day of publication of the book, Andrew Loney, the British author who wrote entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, in which he chronicles Andrew's orgies in Thailand, his greed, his skirting towards the margins of the law in terms of how he raised money, and then in his wake, Sarah Ferguson, his former wife, with whom he shares Frogmore, who's now been demanding her own house and apparently asking to get Adelaide Cottage, which is where Will and Kate were living on the grounds of Windsor Castle.
Do I understand that she has now been entirely expelled from this? She's no longer, he will be continued to be supported by the king, but she will not. And she is out of a house too.
She is, I think, largely now relying on friends. Pretty much everything she's been involved with, from charities to radio shows, have dropped her. And Andrew is being supported privately by the king, not on the country's dollar, as it were. So it's pretty interesting. And then, of course, there was the publication of Virginia Giuffre's book.
Before you go to the next book, let's note at this book that this is the book that the Trumps sued or threatened suit with regard to this book, to the extent that they were introduced, that it referenced their connection with Epstein, and then and HarperCollins, the publisher in the UK, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, almost immediately relented or capitulated, apologized, excised those parts in the book. I think may have recalled the book, but I'm not
I don't think they recalled the book from the shop, but they changed the e-edition. So they edited the e-edition to take out the bit they felt was offending about Melania, and then mysteriously their CEO, who'd been there for some time, resigned. Suddenly, great surprise to everybody in the publishing industry.
It's very hard to recall books from the bookshelf, but they are not issuing the book anymore, my understanding.
Well, if you can get a copy entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, is a very good read. And Andrew Loney has been working on it for many years.
And a collector's copy now.
A collector's copy, which will have gone up in value. You can probably sell it on eBay unless the police come to your house first. And it was self-published in the US, where I believe you can still buy a copy.
I have a copy.
Well, we have a copy here too, actually. Perhaps we should raffle off our copy because we've both read it. But Andrew Loney could not be a more...
Right.
There we are.
Right here.
Andrew Loney, the author, could not be a more British establishment figure. And for him to write this book was a real slap in the face. And then, of course, Prince Charles, or King Charles, 74 years in apprenticeship to his job. I grew up with him as Prince Charles. King Charles was on a walkabout this week and got heckled by someone who shouted about his brother and Epstein. And I cannot tell you how unusual it is for the king to be heckled. I mean, it simply doesn't happen. There's enormous respect, even among Republicans in the UK, for the royal family and for King Charles. And this was also seen as a potential tipping point. Then you've got Prince William, the Prince of Wales, who's got now the monarchy in his sight because, of course, King Charles announced he had cancer and he was living with it, but it wasn't curable. So William is now limbering up for his role, swinging his legs from the throne, and he's had enough of Andrew. He understands that Andrew is... it's not a good thing for the royal family. So they've basically, as you say, defenestrated him.
Dispatched.
Dispatched to the cold wilds of Norfolk, where I have spent some time myself, and it is very lonely and windy up there.
I have been there myself. I was actually quite impressed by the Britishness of Norfolk.
Well, it's beautiful, and of course, it's the home of Sandringham, which is the Queen's, or was the Queen's, Christmas place to go, and of course, where actually Prince Andrew, when he was still Prince, took Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell shooting. And there have been a series of emails which have come out from Andrew to Jeffrey Epstein after the time that he claimed he'd stopped their friendship, and told the BBC in the now infamous interview he did on Newsnight with Emily Maitlis, the reporter Emily Maitlis, that he'd stopped his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And then, in fact, there were emails saying, hey, sorry about this. You know, you and I will play again soon. Just got to give this a bit of time to die down. So bad news for Andrew.
No, it didn't die down. And I think that's what Donald Trump feels about this, or as he says, Epstein, becomes a kind of Shakespearean chant. But I think that's the remarkable thing about this story. It's a story almost designed to bring down people. That's why it goes on. It won't be satisfied. The story can't end until this person and then the next person and then the next person is brought down, with the final person seeming to be Donald Trump.
So the other book that's come out, of course, has contributed to this, and some say was the actual final nail in Andrew's title coffin, is Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, which I picked up, I will admit, with some reluctance, because I was like, how much more can I read about this? There's a point where one gets a sort of overdose of Epstein. But Amy Wallace, her ghostwriter, who insisted on the book being published after Virginia committed suicide earlier this year, has done an excellent job. And there's been a lot of sort of talk about Virginia being an unreliable witness, that she was addicted to drugs when she was young. She was abused by her father. Her father then passed her off to one of his friends, all of which is dealt with in remarkable detail, actually. But the life that she led with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, well, all I can say is there is no reason why you would ever pardon Ghislaine Maxwell and let her out of her prison camp in Texas, where Todd Blanche thoughtfully moved her to after interviewing her for 2 days when she was in a higher security jail in Tallahassee.
And I know that... this book has gotten a lot of attention and people are taking it seriously. I would just footnote to this, and I've always found this a complicated part of this whole Epstein equation, that she particularly, but there are a long list of others, have made an enormous amount of money off of this. And this becomes a kind of industry. And so this is not to say that what she says is not true. She didn't have this experience in this relationship. But it just gives me pause when you've made tens of millions of dollars and perhaps more off of the story you are telling. Just to say that. Totally
fair point. And she got £12 million from the Queen, who wanted all this to go away for her second son, Prince Andrew, who continued to deny that he knew her, even though there was photographic evidence. And the photo was taken by Jeffrey Epstein. And she details 3 occasions that she has sex with Andrew. And yes, she went on to make money from it.
She's the one who introduced the bold-faced names into this story, Prince Andrew among them, and along with Andrew Allen Dershowitz, who who then sued her, and then she was actually forced to recant what she had said. So this is a complicated story, and I just want to note this, not to defend anyone and not to dismiss her, but just as we talk about this story, this narrative, this is a not insignificant note about one of the key people involved in this story.
And I think, to be fair, she talks about the money, and she talks about Brad Edwards, the lawyer who corralled many of the victims, because he too sensed that there was money in this for him and for the victims.
No, I mean, we're talking, and let's talk about the level of money here is astounding. It's literally hundreds of millions of dollars. And we can say, well, these victims deserved it. But whether they did or didn't, the nature of money and the amount of money changes the context in which everything occurs. Even Brad Edwards, who went from a nothing lawyer to a jet-setting lawyer now, and literally an amount of money that you could say supported the South Florida bar. But again, this distracts from the main story and what the shadow of Epstein is doing now. But we should come back to this, to the broader context at some point.
We can come back to it, but one of the other people it claimed was literally Virginia Giuffre, because, all the money in the world didn't put right the life that she'd had. And so it's just a very interesting book coming at the time it does, as this story builds in the US, as we are on, I think, day 30. We're recording this on Halloween, on day 30 of the shutdown. And when tomorrow 42 million people are likely to lose their SNAP benefits and the premiums for healthcare double. And there is a total reluctance to get the government back and swear in poor Adelita Griavo, who's sitting there.
SNAP benefits, just to explain, are food benefits.
Yeah, food benefit. What did I say they were?
Yeah, you didn't say, but it's.
Sorry, I thought by this point we understood what SNAP benefits were, because the fear of losing them is dominating a lot of people's lives. And then we have the congresswoman from Arizona, Adelita Griavo, who's sitting there waiting to be sworn in, and Mike Johnson won't do it. He doesn't want them back because he doesn't want the vote to open the Epstein files. I mean, everybody says you can't make it up, you can't make it up. But as you say, it's almost like a story that's been designed.
And again, to come back to the Epstein Ballroom, they know it. It hangs everywhere within the Trump White House. And we forget about this because we're, bombing boats and
well, we're going back to nuclear testing.
Yeah, and yes, and we're going to and we're back in the Cold War, and et cetera, and invading U.S. cities. But along with all of this, Epstein.
So the other thing that's going on, and we didn't talk about this last week when he was pardoned, but is the pardoning of CZ, the CEO and founder of Binance, the crypto exchange, who had been fined under the Biden regime, I think $4.3 billion for allowing money laundering on the exchange, and he'd been sent to jail himself for 4 years for skirting money laundering laws. And guess who's benefiting from that?
Yeah, and let me, I just pulled a paragraph from a story in yesterday's Wall Street Journal, which I think is worth reading and immortalizing, and everyone should frame this paragraph and put it on their walls. And it says, this spring, Binance, and I cannot look at that word without thinking of Beyonce. So to my mind, it's the Beyonce crypto company.
Well, perhaps Beyonce will launch her own meme coin.
This spring, Binance took steps that catapulted the Trump family venture's new stablecoin product, enhancing its credibility and pushing its market capitalization, wait for it, here it comes, up from 127 million to over 2.1 billion. Now, I think you can actually get a pardon from the President of the United States for much less than that, but this was for the President, I think, a very, very lucrative pardon.
Yes, and I think for CZ, a very easy pardon, right?
You know, I mean, again, and let me go back to a moment on the campaign trail when Trump was very, very irritable, as he was often, but this was at a particular point of irritation, and they were flying out to Colorado, I think, for a fundraiser. And then he began to storm about and saying, why are we doing this? Why am I going to these fundraisers? I don't have to go to these fundraisers because wait for it, crypto guys will give me everything I need.
The crypto guys, and of course you've got David Sachs now sitting in the White House as AI czar, and the sense of any regulation around AI in particular and around crypto, which was something the Biden administration had wrestled with, and Gary Gensler had certainly wrestled with at the SEC. It's an open playground now for people, and happily the younger Trump members, Donald and Eric, are filling their pockets.
And it's not just that it's an open playground. I mean, you would raise your eyes about crypto in any context, but then this double context in which not only the president's supporters benefit, but literally members of the president's family. The president himself is in on the crypto grift in a very, very, very substantial way. I mean, this is we're talking billions. We're not talking about a little here and a little there. We're talking about real money.
And it's worth pointing out that it was Russian money. They were laundering Russian money from Al-Qaeda, money from Iran, money from Hamas. I mean, this was an astonishing platform. And the fine was $4 billion, which gives you a sense of how serious at least the previous regime in America took this.
Yikes.
Should we launch a meme coin? Should we launch an inside Trump's head meme coin?
Well, we should definitely do that. But first, we have to figure out what a meme coin is. And that may...
I think it's chocolate. I think it's chocolate, and it comes wrapped in gold paper, and you get them at Christmas.
I think most other people, they don't care. Let's do a meme coin, even though they don't know what a meme coin is.
It's always fun asking someone to explain crypto to you, because they often just drift off in the middle of the explanation. Interesting that the crypto story appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Very damning of Trump and his business dealings and the son's crypto dealings. Where is the case with Rupert Murdoch? Do we have any info on it? Because he's obviously suing them for... what was it, $10 billion over the birthday letters from Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. I was only threatened with a $1 billion suit, but Rupert Murdoch gets a $10 billion suit, which seems unfair. If they're threatening me with a $1 billion suit, given the disparity in our net worth, I think Rupert Murdoch should be sued for like $1 trillion.
You may have disparity of net worth, but you might not have as big disparity of impact. I mean, it's hard not to think that you, along with Virginia Giuffre, have really driven the Epstein conversation.
Well, that is
different
okay.
way of looking at it.
I'll take that. But in fact, the birthday letter shoe that dropped in the Wall Street Journal was significant. I mean, truly impactful. I mean, it was that moment of vivid connection with a picture. We have the picture of the letter, Donald Trump's signature, which he denied writing. Connecting these two guys.
And to your point, brought down Peter Mandelson, the then British ambassador in Washington, for a much lesser relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, although they were very close friends and Peter signed the note, your best pal. But clearly they had less of a relationship than Epstein and Trump had.
Everybody, and let me repeat this because I think it's vitally important. Everybody had a lesser relationship. These guys, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, were each other's closest friend for more than a decade. And I believe that in the sum total, each other's closest relationship in life.
Okay, that leads us to the polls where, and another newspaper owned.
Well, let's go back, at least tie that question where we are, where Rupert Murdoch is. Again, Donald Trump, the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, published this birthday letter. Donald Trump turned around and said, I didn't do that. That's a complete made-up lie, and I'm suing you for defamation for $10 billion. Then subsequently, the entire birthday book was released with that letter in the book, and letters from hundreds of other people who did not say that is made up. So, at any rate, that suit goes on, but there is concern in Murdoch circles that the price of Murdoch being allowed to become one of the investors in the new American version of TikTok, itself another Trumpian grift story, because somehow the government of the United States has taken over this company and is apportioning out who will get a discount participation in this new reconstituted company. If you are allowed to become an investor in this company, that's like you invest at X and it's suddenly worth 3X. Rupert Murdoch has been invited to become one of those investors, and there are people in the Murdoch circle who believe that the price of that is for him to capitulate on this lawsuit, and it's certainly not defended, and in fact probably having to put some money directly into Trump's pocket. So we should keep our eye on that.
Well, I thought the TikTok deal was supposed to have been dealt with this week, actually, but I haven't seen enough about it, and I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be putting the finishing touches to it in China. I'd certainly read they were planning to do that on his Chinese trip, but that doesn't seem to have come to pass yet.
That has not been released. But the China trip, and we should also always come back. We've dealt with this before. We should always come back to it. That this is a signal defeat for Trump. That he launched that 10 months, more than 10 months now of this administration has been devoted to bringing China to its knees, and the result 10 months in is that Trump is the guy on his knees.
Right. And we have a 1-year truce with rare earths, which is just a phrase that none of us would have said a year ago.
All of this, everything that we said, that we have spoken about here, and often the theme is that we can't remember this 2 weeks from now. That's Trump's incredible gift. But curiously, there's a new poll out that might take issue with that there may be a cumulative effect here, because Trump turns out to be not more and more popular, but less and less popular.
Are you talking about the Washington Post, pal?
I am.
The Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness.
where once it died was supposed to die in darkness. Does it still say that on the post anymore? I don't think so.
I think they might have removed it when Jeff Bezos was saying that actually they needed to embrace the free market of ideas.
Yeah, and just remind that Jeff Bezos, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, owns the Washington Post. He was once a fervent anti-Trumper, but has become with Trump's reelection, along with so many other formerly fervent anti-Trumpers in Silicon Valley, a rather devoted supporter.
Well, and not unlike J.D. Vance, who once referred to Trump as the new Hitler, but now solidly embraces him. How people do political 180s. It's fascinating. So the poll in the Washington Post suggests that Trump's speed and energy over the last 10 months is not playing out well, nor indeed is the shutdown, and that people are beginning to blame the Republicans, who've of course got all three branches, for the shutdown.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I mean, having been following this Trump story for far, far longer than I ever imagined or ever wanted to, I am always left with this feeling that nobody remembers anything. And it is quite possible that everything that we're talking about now, no one will remember that. But let's at least kind of plant the flag here that it is possible that this shutdown is one of those things that will have a permanent impact on Donald Trump. A shutdown. This is as much as he tries to distract from that, this is a major moment. It's a major moment for the Democrats not to have been willing to put themselves out there and say, yeah, well, we could be blamed for this. But the truth is we shouldn't be blamed for this. The Republicans are in control, and let them eat it. Let them eat the fact that all of these government employees are going without paychecks, that people who across the country who rely on food stamps are not getting it. They literally will get nothing. So therefore the $300 or $400 that you have to live on, that has to feed you this month, won't come. So the impact of that, but we're not sure about the impact. I think that's what I mean. There are several levels of impact here. How do people personally react to that? Do they blame Donald Trump? And how do the Democrats and the Republicans as a whole, how do they respond to this? Do they get nervous? I mean, if I were the Democrats, this is a hard moment, because you see these people really going without really suffering, and so you go, okay, we can't let this go on. But at the same time, the Democrats really have nothing else they can do. They have no other leverage on this administration.
And Donald Trump seems intent and excited by the idea of getting this to be the longest government shutdown in history. I think we're 5 days away from that, as if that's some sort of triumph. And he seems to have, or certainly hasn't expressed yet, any concern about the idea of 42 million people not having access to food benefits. I mean, it does seem a remarkable moment. Mike Johnson seems to have been left to try and sort it out. And you can hear now from Republican Congress people who are anxious about this. We've talked before about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her children who are suddenly facing their premiums, health insurance premiums doubling. This isn't good for Republicans. So I don't understand why they are doing this.
Well, I can explain that. I mean, they're literally doing this because this is what Donald Trump wants. I mean, the whole Trump premise is that there is no apologies, there's no contrition, there's no backtracking. You just go forward, you double down, and that has inexplicably proved to be a winning strategy. And from in the Donald Trump playbook, you keep doing what has worked in the past. So the question now is profound. Does this stop working? Is this the moment when it stops working? From Donald Trump's point of view, you say, of course, it's not going to be the moment it stops working. This always works. And in his defense, it has had a long record of success, but
it's not bumped up against 42 million people not getting food benefits, or a million people being furloughed without pay.
A lot of people have forgiven Donald Trump for a lot of things, which you would think that they would not have. I think to me the stakes are almost on a narrative basis are slightly different than individual suffering, which I do not discount in any way. But Donald Trump has thrived on the fact that he always seems to win. For some reason, I mean, this becomes inculcated in the way people think about him. He's a winner. And so they forgive a lot of things because he's a winner, the sense of inevitability around that. But if the Democrats can bring him to the point of literally having to capitulate, and their issue is very precise. It's about Obamacare, which we should also highlight, because the rates on Obamacare of what people are going to have to pay for next year's insurance are skyrocketing as we speak.
Well, tomorrow, the new enrollment period begins tomorrow, and people will find their premiums have doubled.
Not only will they find that their premiums are doubled, but they're getting much less for what they're paying for. I mean, we use Obamacare in my house because I'm a poor writer, and I don't have anyone giving me insurance.
I thought Trump had said that he'd made you rich with all those books you've written about him.
No matter how rich you are, and my version of rich is a pathetic version, you still can't afford health insurance. But having said that, I mean, really what this is, if he capitulates on this, and the Democrats so far are essentially saying it's all or nothing. You've got to do this, or we're going to keep the government shut down. I think he understands this too. That losing to him is. Not losing to him is more important than the suffering of so many people. So how does this come? Does this come back to change the narrative around him? We don't know. But I'm just saying that maybe it does. Maybe there is some hope somewhere here, possibly.
Anna Zinkzieg, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says the ball where John Travolta danced with Princess Diana was held in the West Wing, and it was big enough for them.
Big enough for John Travolta and Princess Diana. Well, there you go.
Okay, and Johan Van Winkle, 9477, says the plans for that ballroom stick out like a sore thumb next to the White House. It is gaudy and tasteless.
Yes. I mean, what else? It's Trump. I mean, remember, this will be the Trump ballroom. And the Trump signature is gaudy and tasteless. I mean, that has been the signature of his career. That is the thematic point. He would not have it any other way. That's the point.
That is the point. The Epstein Ballroom, as we shall now refer to it, as it's referred to in the White House. Ruth Ridley says, my suspicion is as follows. I don't think the main goal is the ballroom. The World War II bunker is under the East Wing. Trump's real project is to enlarge and completely update the bunker and make it into a room outfitted with the latest technology, munitions, weaponry, perhaps even throw in some nuclear weapons. And it is odd that he's been talking about nuclear testing.
Well, I mean, let me. I mean, what I know about this is that bunker is pretty secure already. I mean, it's not that the underlying military facility at the White House has been under-resourced. The White House, as I said before, and I think it's a kind of a fascinating thing, is a facade on a very sophisticated military installation.
Final question from Lynn Atkinson for Ask Melania. Please subpoena her immigration paperwork. How much money did she make and report for her modelling job? And did her income match her lifestyle for 10 years before Donald J. Trump?
Absolutely.
Done, Lynn. Done.
Yes, this is the story. I mean, the entire question here, in the question Melania raises, by these threats to anyone who connects her to Donald Trump, a connection you can see, and the photographic evidence is there. But the question that it prompts is what was her life in the 1990s? She was an Eastern European model who came to New York in the bad old days of being a model in New York. And I think to find out what that story was will be revelatory, and she's what she's essentially asking for.
And you're a man on a mission. You're a man on a mission to find out. Send us your questions for Melania. And if you're coming to our live event at the Museum of the City of New York next week, bring your questions with you. We'll have an audience section and we're excited to get into it. Michael, what are you up to over the weekend?
In our town, this is a Halloween weekend. It's not just Halloween today. But the parade here starts at 2:00 this afternoon, and Halloween events unfold throughout the weekend. So from preschool through the 6th grade, everyone will be in costumes until they are inevitably in tears by Sunday evening.
Too much sugar, as my mum would say. We'll be back on Tuesday. Many people have been asking us to talk about Russell Vogt.
Okay, let's do it. A really unpleasant figure, but let's go for it.
Okay, more unpleasant people to discuss. Michael, thank you very much. I wonder if there'll be videos of the Prince, formerly known as Prince, moving out of Frogmore this weekend. We will keep our eyes closely on that, and we will report back on Tuesday.
Fantastic.
All right. And don't forget to subscribe to The Daily Beast. We're independent media, so we appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Please leave us comments and reviews if you listen on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget, whatever your costume, be Beast. And I'm going to give a shout out to some new Big Beast members. We've got Herbie, Andrew Meller, Sandra Clark, Bonzo, Val, Love San Francisco, Bocock, DC, Karen White, Heidi Riley, Andrea Hodell, Sharon Shipley, Connie Rutherford.
And thank you to Devin, Anna, Jesse. Thank you all.